This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. And as Manny just said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. And today, we've got two guests on. We don't get to have two guests on that often, so I'm excited for that. But before we bring in our two guests, I want to welcome all of our guests listening out there that are members of the active military. We have a lot of active military that listen to this podcast all around the world. It just amazes me. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your service and what you do for our country. And I hope you all make it home safely. And in the meantime, I hope this podcast brings a little home back to you. Also, all of you veterans out there, thank you for your service as well. And I know we have a ton of you in Montana, and of course, all around the United States. We certainly appreciate everything that you do for this great country. Now, real quick, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share the podcast. We appreciate that very much. Now, we are going to get to two guys that are way smarter than me. They're both PhDs in the area of wildlife biology. Their names are Dr. Chad Bishop and Dr. Andrew Whiteley. Chad is a director of the Wildlife Biology Program and a professor for the Department of Ecosystem and Conservation Sciences at the University of Montana. As director, Chad is responsible for a wide variety of functions tied to running the wildlife program, with an emphasis on faculty and student support and program outreach and development. He also teaches courses and leads multiple research projects focused on primarily ungulate ecology. Andrew has been a faculty member of the Franke College of Forestry and Conservation at the University of Montana since 2016. Now, he leads a lab focusing on conservation, genetics of fish throughout Western North America. He also directs Montana State's Fish and Wildlife Genetics Lab at the University of Montana. He has graduate students working on both cutthroat species and Yellowstone ecosystem, along with bull trout, western pearl shell, mussels, and brook trout in their native range. And don't worry, we're not going to get into all wonky lecture stuff. These guys are also entertaining and know their stuff. So what I'd like to accomplish is, well, twofold. One, as a hunter or an angler, you will better understand the species that you're going after or targeting. And of course, in my opinion, when you do that, you tend to appreciate what you're out hunting or catching a lot more. And some of you that are listening right now have some kids that might be thinking about higher education, maybe grandkids that are thinking about that. So I hope that when you get time, maybe you can get them to sit down and watch this too. Maybe consider this program. This program is pretty amazing, and we're very, very lucky to have it at the University of Montana, because this is ranked one of the top in the United States, if not the world. And these two here are two of the best of the best. So let's find out a little more about these two guys. Dr. Bishop, let's start with you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Chad. So how about we learn from you a little bit about yourself and what you do, how you got into this line of study, and especially talk a bit about this incredible program at the University of Montana.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dale. Certainly call me Chad.
Okay, good.
Better for me too. Sometimes when someone says Dr. Bishop, I have to look around too who they're talking to, and the But no, I actually got into wildlife. So I grew up in Iowa, and
Mhm.
my dad was the chief of wildlife for Iowa Department of Natural Resources. He started as a waterfowl research biologist, and actually his first job was in Miles City, Montana. Then he went to Iowa, became waterfowl researcher. So he was a biologist with Montana Fish, Life, and Parks in Miles City, then became waterfowl researcher in Iowa, and then became chief of wildlife for Iowa, and then I grew up under that. I always joke I felt like I had the little league dad of hunting and fishing, so I kind of sort of the opposite of a lot of kids. I had to go, and I was hoping I could go to basketball practice or something, and but I actually, with that, wasn't sure I wanted to go into wildlife. I actually started at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. I went there to run, and Drake attracts a lot of kids from urban areas, so it's Chicago and Minneapolis and the like. And when I was there, once I was exposed to incredible people. I mean, I enjoyed my time at Drake immensely, but then I just realized this lack of connection to the outdoors and to just fundamental misunderstandings of just how there's these ecosystems that exist are connected to people's daily lives. And when I would bring up wildlife, I thought I was talking about partying. So I thought, oh my God, the world's in trouble. So on a dime, I switched my major and ended up going into wildlife. And so then I transferred actually to Montana State University. And so I did my undergrad there, then my master's at University of Idaho. Then I did my PhD at Colorado State University and worked for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And so I was a mule deer researcher there for
Oh,
a decade. And then just kind of overnight when Parks and Wildlife merged in Colorado, kind of like Montana Fish, Life, and Parks here is one agency. They went from 2 to 1. I got asked to play a lead role in that overnight. And then that kind of led me to leaving the field as much as I had been doing field work on mule deer. And then I promoted and became assistant director at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And then about 10 years ago, I was encouraged to apply for the position here at University of Montana, and I didn't hesitate. And I've been here now a decade as director of the wildlife biology program at UM, and love every bit of it. As you mentioned, my main job is to run the program here, but I'm also able to still do some research. So I study deer, elk, and moose, and talk more about that if we want. But yeah, our program, just a few highlights. We have 26 faculty that make up that program. We like to say we span gene to biome, which just means we think we do a pretty good job of covering the whole gamut of what it means to study fish and wildlife. And I learn a little bit more about that here. We attract 340 undergrads here at a time we have in the program from all over the country and international as well. And we have about 65 grad students, give or take, that we have at a time. And those grad students then are as part of their education, they're also doing research projects, and that's how they end up earning their degrees, is through successful completion of those research projects, which we do in partnership with Fish, Life, and Parks, other state agencies, federal agencies, NGOs, and so forth.
all right. How about you, Andrew? Can you spend a little time telling us more about you and where you're originally from, how you got into all this?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Massachusetts, so East Coast, and I think I credit getting into fish, spending summers in Maine at a
Okay.
remote cabin on a lake, smallmouth bass fishing, since I was as far back as I can remember. But I kind of grew up in the suburbs, and I went to college in the Chicago area, and kind of like Chad, didn't get exposed fully as an undergrad to all the cool, biology, wildlife biology that is out there. What really hooked me was going to Alaska right out of undergrad and working in very remote Southwest Alaska for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It was me and one other person at a remote weir with an electric fence around our camp, and carried a shotgun for the bears, and we were tagging fish in the stream. It was just opened my eyes to what I really wanted to do. So after that, and being exposed to people, other folks working in the field, other summer techs, from Missoula who would speak about Missoula with like misty-eyed reverence. And I filed that away like, wow, that sounds like a place to check out. Yeah, and then I got fortunately enough to go to grad school here at UM in the early 2000s. So I got my PhD here working on mountain whitefish, the
Yeah.
little respected salmonid here in Montana. And then I went to some other places, left to come back was the dream, but I never thought I'd end up coming back because it's pretty saturated here with people doing fish stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I went to Alaska again, Quebec, spent some time in Canada, and then I got a first faculty position at UMass Amherst before coming here in 2016.
Wow. You guys have done a lot. And of course, that shows why you have the positions you have now at the University of Montana. So, Chad, let's talk a bit about for those, especially for those maybe younger ones that might be considering studying at the University of Montana and maybe checking this program out. What are some of the things that a student would do after they were to get a degree, graduate from the wildlife program? What are some of the things that education would do for you?
Yeah, well, at a really simple level, and I always tell prospective students, if you'd like a career where you're able to study, manage, or conserve wildlife, and we just say wildlife, we mean the whole gamut of fish and wildlife, terrestrial, aquatic. But if you want a career to study, conserve, or manage that, then a wildlife biology degree is going to be as good of a bet as any. That's going to best prepare you. And as you kind of mentioned, we have a real strong program here. So a couple of things that are important to just know is there's some jobs that you can get with a bachelor's degree. And then there's other jobs, like typically, so it's like conservation officer, game warden positions. That'd be one example where a bachelor's degree is the requirement. But most biologist positions, and this certainly holds for fish, wildlife, and parks here in Montana, require a master's degree. And that master's degree will take 2 to 3 additional years. But it's very different. And then I'll tell you where everybody goes, but it's kind of connecting the dots there, the degrees and the jobs. But that master's degree is not as many classes and a lot more field time doing the research project that you've been brought on to do. And then some will go on to get a PhD, and that would be more if you want to do research. So where people end up, but just starting local here, a lot of the biologists and employees with Montana Fish, Life, and Parks are alumni out of this program. So same with Idaho Fish and Game, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Arizona Game and Fish. There's a lot of state fish and wildlife agencies. Federal agencies, certainly U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. A lot of students will go on to work there. Forest Service, BLM, Natural Resources and Conservation Service, Park Service. But then more and more, a lot of students go on to work for any number of non-governmental organizations. So everything from like our ones here, right in our backyard, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Boone and Crockett Club, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, DU, Trout Unlimited, Nature Conservancy, the whole gamut. And then also ones like science-focused organizations like Wildlife Conservation Society or even Smithsonian. We have students going to work for zoos. Some will end up in the private sector. There's consulting firms. Some will be wildlife biologists or like timber companies. It's really broad-based where our students end up. But maybe just a couple interesting just tidbits that might interest people where one can go. We've had a lot of our alumni they're the founders of innovative organizations. So this thing called Working Dogs for Conservation. Have you ever heard of that, Dale? Working Dogs for Conservation?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No.
It's actually in Montana. It was formed here in Montana. And those working dogs are the ones that you might see on TV in Africa, for example, working with rangers on wildlife trafficking and poaching. So I'm thinking about like ivory and pangolin scales and all those things that are poached and trafficked. They often use dogs to help address that. So those dogs, in a lot of cases, are coming from right here. But that's just an example of one of our alumni founded back. Lantani founded Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, one of our alumni. We have alumni at all levels of those organizations I talked about. But even right now, the top positions for Fish and Wildlife or Forest Service, BLM, and National Park Service are all OMs out of our program. Jeff Hagner, former FWP director, came out of life here. Jonathan Carlin, he's actually the minority whip in the legislative session here in Montana last session. So legislators, so some students go policy. I didn't mention that as much, but so he's Carla Gann, she's the former CEO of Ducks Unlimited Canada. So just some examples.
Wow. Yeah. Who knows where it leads you? And it's really neat to hear how there's just so much more to this than walking through the field looking at, deer turds. It goes way beyond that. Andrew, what about you as far as someone that would want to get a degree in fish biology and that? Would it be kind of along these same lines? They would be working for FWP, things like that. Talk about, what your former students would be doing.
Yeah, well, definitely along the lines of what Chad just said, but with a fish slant. So I'm lucky enough to get students as sophomores. I teach a fisheries techniques class where I get them out electrofishing and netting fish and in local systems here. And I've been teaching that course for a few years, and what really cool thing I've seen is that I'm trying to get the students the skills early on so they can start getting summer jobs in agencies or NGOs in the field and get their foot in the door. But yeah, they go on to serve as summer techs or bios for FWP or other state agencies. We have this Idaho Fish and Game keeps poaching our good people.
Yeah, you got to watch those Idaho folks. They got that skinny little section up on top of their state, and they sneak over. But yeah, the fish biology side of it, I talked to a lot of fish biologists on this program, and also a lot of other wild biologists too. But when you brought up that electrofishing, I talked to Heath Headley over on Fort Peck Reservoir quite often, and especially right after they do that big egg collection of the Chinook salmon there. And I always ask him if I can borrow that electrofishing boat, because I just would love to get my hands. You see some of those great big salmon that they pull out of there that nobody caught. It's like, dang. But yeah, it's a fascinating career. It really is. And it takes you to places all over. So I really hope that some of the parents, grandparents, and especially young people that are listening to this today might consider this, because it's something that we're going to need. When we come back, I want to talk a bit about the fun stuff, the research, because these are the game changer kind of things, whether it's fixing it so we don't lose a species or helping a species along or just understanding. Seems like the longer we're on this planet, the more questions we have. They say they don't make them like they used to, but at Superior Hardwoods of Montana, that's kind of the whole point. This isn't just a lumber yard. We're talking about 11 acres of reclaimed wood. Wall paneling, flooring, trim, beams, slabs, you name it. Every single piece has a story behind it. Old barns, historic homesteads, long-forgotten factories. This wood has been places, and now it can be part of your story, too. Maybe you're building a home, remodeling a room, or just putting together that dream project you've had on the back burner. Superior Hardwoods of Montana can help bring it to life. They can even custom mill it to fit your exact vision, because real craftsmanship never goes out of style. And here's the thing, you're not just getting character and beauty when you choose reclaimed wood, you're reclaiming American history. You're giving something old a brand new chapter with values that never go out of style. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Whether you're a contractor, a weekend DIYer, or someone who just loves a one-of-a-kind piece of wood, Superior Hardwoods is open to the public and ready to help. Exotic woods, live-edge slabs, pre-finished and unfinished flooring, it's all in stock and ready to go. Need help picking out the right material? Just ask. Their team has been doing it since 1977, and they know how to guide you through the woods, literally and figuratively. swing by their beautiful showroom at 5120 Highway 93 South in Missoula, or check them out online at superior-hardwoods.com. I promise you, you'll leave inspired. That's Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Local, knowledgeable, family-run, and ready to help you build something that lasts. Let them help guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Go see him. We are back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. I've got two great PhDs who, thank goodness, just say, hey, call me Chad and call me Andrew here. But we're talking about the wildlife biology program at the University of Montana, which is very impressive. And I think you're going to get even more excited about what they do when you learn about their research. So let's get into that fun stuff. What I'd like is, could each of you talk about some of the research projects that you've been involved in with the wildlife biology program? And if you want, tell us how those studies went and how they might benefit wildlife and habitat, because most of our audience are real avid hunters and fishermen, and of course, just people that love to get out on Montana's outdoors. Andrew, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to go over a couple of the major projects I have going on. So most of them, if not all of them, have to do with various fish species here in Montana and in the West. I think I'll start by describing one of the projects. So in aquatic systems, I'm mostly focusing on river systems. So from main stem river up to the headwaters, think about how easy it is for a river system to become fragmented so that the fish can't move from one place to another. And so that could be bull trout not able to access overwintering habitat or get back to their spawning habitat. Movement is key, and connectivity is so key for populations to remain viable. And one-dimensional riverine systems can easily become fragmented. And so a kind of a universal problem in wildlife biology is when populations get small and isolated, then we start to worry about them becoming inbred. And I know that's a kind of a loaded term, and in conservation genetics, we mean something really specific by it, but it's not that complicated, right? It's the same stuff that we're worried about in different dog breeds that are prone to hip dysplasia or whatever issue might be specific to a dog breed. That's just lack of genetic variation, and the gene pool becomes winnowed down, and the certain nasty traits stick around when they become, two copies or homozygote in an individual that have the negative trait get expressed. And so this is something that people are worried about across the fish and wildlife spectrum. My part in it is thinking about small headwater populations of trout. So West Slope cutthroat trout, primarily, east of the divide here in Montana. They occur in small isolated populations. They probably, long time ago, had large migratory West Slope using bigger river systems, but now they're confined to the headwaters. And so working with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks since 2016, 2017, we've got a long-term project going near Great Falls and near Helena, where working with FWP and landowners, we've gone to these sites of small West Slope populations. Maybe these are the small headwater fish that are, not more than 10 inches long, but important sources of biodiversity remaining for West Slope. And there'll be small populations. Often they'll put in a barrier. FWP and partners will put in a barrier to keep non-native species out, fixing one problem. Maybe they're keeping brook trout out that would take over and outcompete West Slope, but now they're fragmenting the habitat and they're creating an isolated population that might become inbred. And what we really care about that from a practical sense is that the population biology is kind of, what's the way to say it, like suppressed, right? So their vital rates, their survival or reproductive rates are slower and lower than they could be. And one,
So, uh, just to jump in there a second. So this goes beyond just the fact that over years we've created dams and in some places reconfigured the way streams and that go. So it can go beyond just that, than just even little barriers and things like that you're talking about.
potentially for some species, like little culverts can be barriers for
Mm.
little sculpin. But mostly with salmonids, trout, we're talking about some kind of waterfall, or so they can be a natural waterfall or a small dam.
There are concerns with species out there that may one day we just no longer find in Montana. What are there some things beyond the physical side? Is it more like stalking, or how can one fix this?
Yeah, so that's what we're that
Figuring out.
goal of the research project is testing this idea that has it's called genetic rescue, kind of a slick name, but I'll unpack it for a second. So the idea is it's a little bit different than stalking, but taking just a few individuals from another natural population, like fewer than 10 individuals, and moving them into that isolated population. So the idea is if those transplanted individuals are successful in mating, then they're going to basically bring new genetic variation into that population and mask the negative stuff. And as a result, you should get a population level response, meaning you should get higher reproductive rates, higher survival, higher growth, and a population that's more viable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been done in Florida panthers, adders, a snake in Sweden, prairie chickens. So it's been even bighorn sheep at the bison range. So it's cross wildlife and fisheries. It hasn't been tested in headwater trout. So what we've done is carefully pick populations that are above barriers, and we electrofish the whole thing, and we know who's there. And then we put a few individuals in. And for example, with this West Slope project, since 2017, every summer we go back and we've been sampling every individual we can catch. They tend to be about a mile of habitat or less. And then we use genetic methods to figure out who the parents were when we catch offspring. So we catch the babies, and we can use genetics to say, oh yeah, you're an offspring of one of the fish we moved, you're not. And
Oh, you got to be kidding me! So then you're actually seeing how the program's working if those fish are reproducing and fixing them. Wow, that's fascinating.
yeah, because there is a risk. There's the idea that if you bring in outside individuals and their genetic material, you can reduce what makes that population suited locally for that habitat. So environmental conditions that we call it local adaptation. They're adapted to, when spring runoff is, what food is available, how often drought might hit a system. They tend to be adapted to those conditions. And if you bring in outside material, you potentially could break that down. So where before we start moving fish around like crazy, we're trying to test it carefully and over multiple years and fish generations to see if both the positive effects happen, and we are seeing those positive effects. We're seeing genetic variation go up. We're seeing growth rates go up of the fish. We're seeing in one stream, we're even seeing fish that have signs of inbreeding, like kinked backs and opercular flaps missing, which could be a legacy of Whirling disease. So it's not sure inbreeding, but in the part of the stream where we know the transplants bred a lot, we don't see those traits anymore. And in another part of the stream, we still see them. So really cool stuff that we're just following over time. I'll be out there in 2 weeks, continuing the long-term study.
Yeah. Now, Chad, you're on the talking about critters that are on the ground outside of the water and we see this kind of research happening there. Talk about some of the different research projects that you guys have been involved in and all that.
Yeah, Dale, thanks. So myself and several of our faculty both on independently and working directly in collaboration, do study big game populations and just some of the foundational aspects of what's leading to that research is, generally speaking, it's concerns over declining, whether it be deer populations or elk populations or sheep populations or moose or wherever we have concerns about what those populations are doing. Often there's a desire then to do research to better understand what's going on so that we can try and make some management decisions. And when I say we, that's more in this part of the world, Montana Fish, Life and Parks and Idaho Fish and Game. And so we work together to try and come up with some answers that can help inform decisions. And kind of big picture, we think about, especially in the northern part of the country like we are, big picture, weather can really drive some of those population changes just from one year to the next. So if we have drought and severe winters happen, no matter what we do, we might expect where those effects hit the worst to see some decline in those populations that we otherwise don't want to see. But of course, we can't control the weather, and that's always been part of it. So what we're trying to do is, with all that kind of background variation happening to these populations, we want to look at what are those things we can manage. And so in most of my work, let's set disease and chronic wasting disease aside for a second, because that's a whole nother beast. But we're always looking at what's the status of our habitat quality, what's maybe going on there, where could we maybe do some habitat enhancement work or some forest management works. And then there's especially in the northwestern Montana, northern Idaho, as you and your listeners know well, I'm sure we have that full set of carnivores on the landscape. So we've got grizzly bears and black bears and mountain lions and wolves and coyotes and bobcats and lynx, actually. And so you're studying this in a system with that full set of carnivores. And so a lot of what we study is trying to understand the relative drivers, or what's determining what these populations are doing from both a bottom-up food perspective, because at the end of the day, they've got to have sufficient food to reproduce and survive at the levels we want them to. And then at the same time, though, you've got these top-down pressures, we call them, from the predation. And at times, that predation could be driving population declines, even if just in a shorter temporal window. And other times, that predation is occurring, but it's not driving those declines. And so our work is always trying to better understand that to inform decisions. So we've been part of a series of projects over the last decade. Most recent one in Montana that three of us have been working on is the Knoxon Elk Project, we've called it, or Pilgrim Creek. But it's a big elk study that's still ongoing, but it's getting close to being wrapped up just there past Thompson Falls. I just wrapped up a different project in Idaho right across the border studying the whole complex of ungulates and carnivores in the panhandle of Idaho. And that was really focused, heavy emphasis on white-tailed deer, because I think one of the things we're losing track of is white-tailed deer just keep expanding in these areas.
Yeah.
And now, like in Idaho up there, they're harvesting more white-tailed deer than anything else. And so that's key to the, and just, and for Montana as well. I mean, that's key to the hunting revenues. But then they're also playing this key role as a main prey base there. So some of the things you find, like in this Knoxon project, one aspect I did was the forage nutrition side, working with a grad student. And what we found is in that Pilgrim Creek, Knoxon area, in this northwest Montana area we studied, that's all Forest Service land. And the Forest Service over time has done some of these small habitat or small forest cuts. So they average about 0.19 square miles in size. So the idea is they're not these humongous clear cuts, but they're small cuts that they're doing in that forest. And what we learned from that was that those cuts are increasing the amount and quality of forage, and the elk are using them. So when done right and not overboard, that can be a way. So what you're doing in pockets like that is you're removing that overstory. The sun gets to get to the forest slower, and it can be either a kind of an even age or clear cut at a small scale, or it can be thinning. We found benefits of both. And then you would get you get the forbs and the grasses. So the flowers and grasses and understory shrubs release, And then and that's what the deer and elk are keen in on for forage, and then that can increase the amount of nutrition in the landscape and then lead to better population productivity and survival. And at the same time, then we're trying to understand, okay, where are those real predation pressures? How are those carnivores interacting as they're capitalizing on these prey resources? And then in some cases, we might find, well, there's a pretty big, often we're seeing, generally speaking, lion predation on adults, mountain lions, tends to be the most important thing we're concerned about and how we manage that. And then on the neonate side, black bears tend to be a major player, whether it's northern Idaho or western Montana. And so we, in some cases, there's opportunities to do some additional management of those species to benefit the prey. And in other cases, there's not. That's already being managed pretty robustly in terms of quotas and the like. And maybe there's more opportunities from the habitat side in terms of partnering with our forest managers. But another thing I just mentioned quick is we've also got work. Josh Millspaugh, who's our Boone and Crockett Chair of Wildlife Conservation at UM, he and I are advising a couple indigenous students from Blackfeet Reservation on the bison reintroduction work up there. And that's also collaborative with Glacier National Park. So that you'll be seeing pretty soon some bison released again up there at Chief Mountain. And so we've got work tied in with there. And that Landon McGee, who he's starting a PhD with us, he just finished his master's where he studied the moose population there in that is in the western part of the Blackfeet Indian Reservation and then Eastern Glacier. And he used cameras to get a population estimate of those moose. And one of the first efforts to do that, but we're increasingly using cameras to try and estimate abundance or the amount, the population size of these ungulate populations, especially in these forested landscapes where the helicopter surveys aren't as easy to see through that canopy and get good counts. And so our program in general, Paul Lucas and his students have led a lot of that work, but they really, I mean, just globally, they've been the leaders in working with Idaho Fish and Game and Montana Fish and Parks, but in really developing the models, like how do you take all these camera photos from a set of game cameras out there to generate a population estimate? And they've done some really impressive work on that. So now we're able to get better estimates than we have maybe been able to in the past in these dense canopy forests.
The thing that fascinates me so much about what you're talking about here is everything is so interrelated that we need this thing because that critter ends up providing this for that one and so on. And so there's this delicate balance. I want to talk a bit about AI. It's just kind of getting into everything. I mean, even this stupid job I have, AI is helping me do things, edit and do all kinds of things that speed it up. In the area that both these gentlemen are in, you're talking about right now, it could take years to see the results of what you're doing. So I want you to tell me if maybe AI could speed that up by thinking ahead in that. So we'll talk about that. Plus, we're going to have a little fun with these gentlemen and answer a few questions that I get from a lot of you out there, because we got the guys that know a lot about it. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Truth is, the Montana Outdoor Podcast wouldn't exist without their incredible support. And if you've been enjoying these episodes each week, maybe it's time to support the folks who help make it happen. So here's the question. Do you need a trailer for work, for hauling gear to your next adventure? Or maybe a new truck bed to help keep your life organized, whether it's for work or play? Well then, go see the folks who already get what you're about. You see, if you listen to this show, you've already got something in common with Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Like you, they love the outdoors. They work hard, and they're dang good at what they do. Their job? Helping people like you get your work done faster so you can get back out in Montana's great outdoors. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer carries a full lineup of Diamond C trailers, gooseneck, equipment, dub trailers, well, you name it. Whether you're hauling a few supplies or towing the big stuff, Diamond C trailers are built to handle it all with reliability and ease. They also carry CM truck beds, the strongest, most durable truck beds around. Plus, they service everything they sell. Need your trailer rewired so the lights work the way they're supposed to? They'll take care of that too. Got a new truck? They'll get you set up with the accessories you need, installed and ready to roll. And don't wait until the last minute to schedule your trailer service. Do that ahead of time so your gear's ready to go when you are. They also stock a huge selection of parts for Boss snowplows, CM truck beds, and Diamond C trailers. And if it's not in stock, they'll find it. Need financing? Well, they've got you covered there, too. Need a gooseneck or fifth wheel hitch for that rodeo trip or family outing to the great outdoors? Yep, they install those, too. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They're in Missoula at 5680 Expressway. You can call them at 406-549-4243 or check them out online at rmtte.com. That's Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, rmtte.com. Now let's get back to what Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer helped create, the podcast. We are back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, and we have been having a fascinating discussion with Chad Bishop and Andrew Whiteley, and they have been telling us about their research projects and all the incredible things they do at the wildlife biology program at the University of Montana. Chad, you were talking about this, and also Andrew, where you're doing these research projects, could AI, and maybe you're already using it, could that help you speed that process up? Talk about that, Chad. Has that hit your industry yet?
Yeah, well, I'll give a real concrete example of where we're using it. So I was talking about those cameras. And so we might, in a typical study design, go out and put, let's say in this area, 100 of those game cameras. And we randomly put them out there. And then those cameras, though, are going to generate millions of photos that we've got to go back through. So yeah, we are using AI now. That's what's making this possible. 10 years ago, this just wouldn't have even been doable. The technology of where cameras,
just looking at the pictures.
And so now where we can use AI is to do that initial screening of photos to get rid of all those photos that are just grass and the shrubs and the trees. And so that you can at least get it down to the animals, and then you can have humans go back and then do the final classifications. And so it saves an immense amount of time. So that's one example where we've been using AI direct. AI is making me feel old. And so as far as your question about where it can take us, I know how we're using it, where it can help, make us go somewhere faster. I'll bet it's there. And I'm always amazed by, the students that we get to work with, and especially some of those PhD students. They're amazing. It's just amazing where they're at, and we're mentoring them, but you're learning from them. And so I bet some of them in our program could answer that better than me, but yeah. I'll let Andrew jump in now.
Yeah. What about you? I would think AI has got to be moving in that direction there. Just as you were talking, I was thinking about, wow, some of these research projects could take years and years. Are you using that to maybe speed some of those up?
Yeah, I can give a couple fish examples. So one big issue here in Montana people have been looking at it for 50 years, is hybridization between rainbow trout and cutthroat trout, which I know is a whole issue. I'm happy to talk about cut bows, and if you're curious.
Yeah. Oh boy, yeah. We'll save that for the next time. We can get into a major argument with some of our listeners there.
I'm sure. But on the AI front, there's some folks. So someone over in Bozeman works for the Wilderness Society, is leading a project where her name's Mariah Meek, and she has an AI tool that was originally built to identify fish species, say like marine species that may be mislabeled or misidentified going into markets. But now she wants to take a bunch of pictures of trout, and then we use genetics to figure out, okay, that's a hybrid to this extent. This one's not, this one is. So we know the truth. And then we have AI try to figure it out, because we've tried to have humans look at pictures and just looking at the fish, it just doesn't work well. But maybe AI can see stuff that we can't, in the spotting pattern and the slash and, whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that is going to get developed. It's moving so fast right now, but it's pretty amazing what it can do for us now. Now, I want to get into a couple other things, and I know I've taken a lot of your guys' time, so I'll try not to take too much more of it. But one in particular, and since we're getting into some of this futuristic stuff and that, there was not long ago, we heard about this company up in Canada that basically brought the dire wolf, which was a wolf that died out like over 12,000 years ago. And I think a lot of us saw pictures of these little dire wolf pups that they had, in essence, brought back. And hopefully they don't let any of those out, though from what I understand, they're not quite as like dangerous as what the real dire wolf would be. But anyway, do you guys see that as a potential in the future of maybe using some genetic research to help remove some things, whether it be CWD or whirling disease or things like that, out of our environment? Chad, let's start with you. What do you see that happening?
Well,
Are we just see woolly mammoths running around Montana at some point?
well, they're talking about woolly mammoths, but I think since this is Andrew's specialty area, so I think you should start with him, and then I can maybe fill in a little more. But I mean, this is certainly like all I'll say, generally speaking, is the advances that are happening in generally speaking, conservation genetics are rapid and advanced, and that's again Andrew's specialty area. And so I think it'd be better for all of us if Andrew responded to this one.
All right, Andrew. So can you make me about a 30-pound walleye? My dream come true. Go ahead. Talk a bit about this.
So big picture, I think it's still science fiction. So here's my big take on it. We don't really understand. So that the going from gene to what that organism actually looks like for a trait that we care about in a wild animal is so complicated. There's potentially many genes, the environment that individual grows up in, both internal, external, all those things. So nature nurture is playing out in this incredibly intricate, beautiful, complicated way. And we're starting to understand that well for some what we call model organisms like mice and fruit flies. Sometimes we can understand, okay, this gene, if we go in and we edit it, we have this effect on the overall end result. But to take that into the wild with all the complexity that Chad's describing, from top down, bottom up, all those connections, to think that we're at the point where we can say, okay, here's the gene that's the problem. Let's fix that. Maybe in some cases, maybe if there's a major gene for resistance to a certain disease, maybe. But like the traits I study are things like what we call life history. Like, when do you mature? How fast are you growing? Do you migrate or not? So complicated.
Yeah.
And yes, it's one of the major forefronts is in some cases, like in steelhead and Chinook, it turns out there's just one major gene that's having a major effect on whether you're coming back from the ocean early or not.
Really?
But even there, it's so complicated to think that we could go in and edit it in a way that likely to fix the problem rather than create more problems. I think we're there yet, as someone who thinks a lot about conservation genetics.
Kind of the back to the old saying, don't mess with Mother Nature.
Don't tinker.
Yeah. We end up with something we don't want to see.
But it's crazy, right? Because moving a few individuals into a population, it's not that far. People are proposing like, well, let's just go into that population and tweak the gene that's the problem. we don't know the gene that's the problem yet, and we don't know what to tweak. So we're just not quite there yet.
But you're working on it.
We're working on it, and
Yeah.
AI will help us get there.
Yeah. That's exciting stuff. Lastly, we'll have a little fun here, but also it is a question I get often. And I certainly, I don't want to discount some of these things that I hear from our viewers and listeners out there. But for example, since, I'll bet you the 1950s, people have been seeing in Flathead Lake what now is called the Flathead monster. And this kind of relates to the Loch Ness monster, and that if you see so many people over years and years and years and they keep seeing it, well, okay, maybe there is something there. Maybe it isn't just a weird ripple. And we've even seen some pictures that you really got to go, that kind of looks like it's real. Do you feel that, or let me start this way, is it possible for something like a species that could live, Flathead Lake, for example, very deep, large lake. Is it possible that something like that could exist in Flathead Lake? Andrew?
I'm going to disappoint you and your listeners because I haven't been, it's not something I'm up on.
Okay. You better get on it, man.
I haven't gone down those. So the Loch Ness monster, lots of controversy, right?
Sure.
There's the famous photo that turned out somebody kind of doctored that, right? Am I right there?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what's the history of the Flathead? So are there people have taken photos over time?
Yeah, there are some photos. I think we'll see more, as now people are rarely without a camera because it's hooked to our phones. But I used to discount all this. I said, oh, come on now. That can't be. And they brought up the Lake Superior whitefish in Flathead Lake. That fish makes up, from what I've been told, the largest biomass of anything in Flathead Lake, yet there's only a few times a year that you can catch them. Otherwise, you don't see them. They're not around. But then when the perch fry start moving around, they go crazy, and you can catch 100 of them in a day. So, okay, maybe something like that. It can hide for most of the year. So, Chad, what about you? I mean, is Bigfoot running around? Yeah, we hear it all the time. We hear audio tapes. We see movies, and yes, a lot of them are doctored, but there are some that people have said, that could be real. What do you think? Is that a possibility that something like that could have existed in our forests all this time and just no one's ever really saw it?
Well, I guess I'd just generally start by saying, I think most in our wildlife biology field anyway probably would not believe that Bigfoot exists at this point. However, there are individuals and there are people, biologists, that are emphatic that there's evidence and they've detected it. I would say this, I guess, for that to be, there are some areas in the Northwest forests that do not get much human occupancy. I think you'd have to start there, but that would be, and that's where some of the filming or people that believe they've seen it would point to.
Yeah.
But I guess what I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I'm always reminded of, in my case, my individual case, is that I guess always been taught the lack of evidence is not evidence of lack. Yeah. I think the profession would say we've searched enough, looked enough, and so forth, that there really isn't compelling evidence. But what I would just finish with is that cameras are a great example of we're using those more and more now, especially across the Northwest in these densely canopied environments. And man, if Bigfoot's out there,
he's going to
have a tough time evading all those cameras. I'm now at the time when I got to go to the bathroom, I'm looking around, someone going to take a picture of me. So I think that's
my first question when I start get these, and I'm not making fun of some of you out there, but I always start thinking, okay, does this person drink or do drugs a lot? Because I don't know. And sorry, I know I just probably pissing people off, but, and I'm not saying you're crazy. Maybe you did see something, but I tend to agree with you. As much as we're out there now and our science is out there, eh, pretty tough to say it is, but we'll see. Bottom line, then, guys, I want to thank both of you so much for spending time. If you could just, in closing, give each of you an opportunity to maybe give a little pitch for the wildlife biology program, and just for all us out here listening and watching, what can we do to help you? Because you're doing some really cool stuff. So, Andrew, let's start with you.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, it's something that I was thinking of earlier. So I have the good fortune of teaching sophomores generally about fish techniques, right? And so a question I often ask myself, so these students come in, they're eager to learn about fish and wildlife and get out in the field, and I take them snorkeling, and they're just like, that's why I came here. This is why I want to be a wildlife biologist. I get these students that are just, they're out there fishing and hunting, and they love interacting with the resource, but getting them to that next step to be like, hey, we need the next generation of folks to be the managers that are keeping track of what's out there and doing stuff on the ground, and how to, I'm just curious about feedback on that from you, for your listeners. Like, how do you really get people to see, like, oh, okay, I need to learn a little bit about computers and coding so I can do this in a way that's really efficient. But there's this big picture, like, I want to do that. I want to manage the next generation of wildlife.
Yeah. Well, let's see what kind of response we get. And I put on the screen a picture of you with some younger students about to snorkel in the river there. So that gives you an example of, hey, let your imagination go wild, and check this out. Chad, as director of the wildlife biology program at the University of Montana, give us your thoughts as far as your elevator pitch of why folks ought to notice you guys a bit more and maybe help when you need some help.
One thing I just always want to come back to is we've got this amazing assemblage of faculty that could be just about anywhere. And we've got 26 of them working together. And so you couple that, and I should say, and people who have worked elsewhere always will say this about us, is that our faculty are incredibly collaborative. The egos which maybe sometimes are there in higher ed, don't seem to be here. And people think about their peer faculty. They think about how to help. It's a really synergistic, collaborative group. And people that have worked elsewhere that come into this say it's not that way everywhere. So I think that creates good energy. I'm just glad I have that opportunity to lead a program like that. But you couple that expertise in that group of faculty with this kind of classroom, because our classroom is Montana and the area. It's, we're so fortunate, our proximity to all the things we've been talking about today. And that's kind of that secret sauce that's what we draw students from all over to come here. And then, as Andrew has just been describing, to every extent we can, while recognizing, especially in undergrad education, still requires you to walk into lecture halls, we try and emphasize hands-on learning and really and so, again, Andrew's just a perfect example about it. Sophomores going out every week and getting in the field and doing these things. And we've got Dr. Ring Gomez, one of our other professors, is doing a wildlife techniques course at that sophomore level that parallels that. And then, we have those outdoor labs, but then with other courses, and then it just goes from there. We have student groups that create incredible opportunities. I consider them partners in education, these student associations. And so it just so happens, out of the 26, it's just coincidental at the moment, but I'm the faculty advisor for a Wildlife Society student chapter, and Andrew's our faculty advisor for the American Fisheries Society student chapter. Those are just two examples. These students volunteer their time to lead these student groups, and then we partner with them so they could go off for a weekend and do something that you couldn't just require in a class because of the time it takes. Or we take them to these professional conferences where they're then able to interact with all the professional fish and wildlife biologists in it. And it just expands out from there. And even things we haven't talked about, but like undergrads can do a senior thesis here, where they
Yeah.
get to go do their own research project under the mentoring of like Andrew and our other faculty. And I think he just put that together, and that's the big, I think, draw here. And I appreciate you having us on. Just, I think sometimes maybe people don't just realize what's right here in the backyard with the
Yeah.
wildlife program in Montana, because it's a pretty special program. And I was just glad they welcomed me into the position to get to lead it for a bit.
Well, we're lucky to have both of you. And what I love about what both of you do is, and I'm not knocking, your law professors or that, for example, a law professor, they got to teach. Rarely are they in the courtroom. Political science people, rarely have they held office because they're teaching that. You guys are actually out there in the field, hands-on doing it and bringing the students with you. And to me, considering what kind of education a person would want, to me, that would just be incredible. I wish I could have done that when I was younger, because that's fascinating. And I think you're going to turn out some people that keep making Montana the special place that it is. So thanks for joining me. I hope you guys will come back again. And now that we've done this podcast, we'll get some questions in and all that. And we'll have to bring you back, have a bunch of email questions ready for you of people that said, hey, what about this? What about that? So that could be interesting. But until then, gang, thank you so much, both of you, for your time and what you do.
Thanks, Dale, for having us.
And there you have it, folks. That is a fascinating discussion with two very, very smart guys that are also humble and really cool about what they do. So just a great discussion. Want to get your emails and let us know. I'll have in the podcast description an area where you can send me emails, and then we'll get your questions answered by these guys and just in general. And I'd love to hear your comments on this. We've got more really great podcasts coming up. One in particular coming up. A lot of you have been asking about what's the deal with the Tiber Reservoir and why are the walleye all of a sudden so big? Or has it been all of a sudden? If we remember just this last few months ago when we had that last tournament, I mean, that broke like national records for the largest win in the, say, top 5 places of anywhere. So why did that turn on all of a sudden? Well, we're going to see what we can find out. Also, we just don't talk a lot about Tiber, so we'll talk about what's all in that reservoir and why you might want to go fishing there. So we'll do that and a lot more. Till then, you guys be safe out there, be good to each other, and we'll see you next time on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.